I thought I would begin tonight with a little bit of background of my husband so that I can give you just some idea about things that he won't be addressing about himself tonight, so I can do that, and then he can get right on to the issues that are concerning to all of us right now. Alan and I have 10 children, 10 grown children, and we have 37 grandchildren, and we're expecting one to be born anytime now, maybe within a week or maybe even right away. And then after that, there are 3 more that are coming, so we have a lot to look forward to there. Alan is a businessman. He owns and operates a farm near St. Peter with our son Nathan, an 800-acre farm. He holds a Master's of Arts degree from Minnesota State University at Mankato. And he is a past member of 2 school boards. He has been professor of political science for many years, and he's retired now at Bethany Lutheran College in Mankato. He served 3 terms in the Minnesota House of Representatives in the early 80s, or in the early to mid 80s. He was chief author of a bill that transformed a state welfare department into the Minnesota Department of Jobs and Training. He was chief author of the bill to legalize homeschooling in Minnesota. He's author of 5 books on issues of constitutional law and education. Alan personally discovered and made an issue in 2009 of the huge marriage penalty in Obamacare. And he also was the leader, really, of the effort to repeal Minnesota's Profile of Learning Education system, which was implemented in the fall of 1998. And it was an undertaking, a huge undertaking, that took a huge amount of leadership and efforts from a lot of people to create a grassroots movement to turn that around, and was successful in doing that. Those are a few things just to give you a little bit of background on his experience. He's a great researcher. He is able to find, the thing about him looking at legislation, he's very good at knowing how to read the bills to find out where to look and what to look for because of his experience doing it when he was in the state legislature. And so you'll find things in the bills and what they really do and what they really mean very effectively. And it's one thing that people appreciate about him and gives him an opportunity to provide some real leadership on some of these issues. So with that, I think I'll bring forward Alan Quist.
Baseball pitcher, I have to make sure the mound is just the way I like it before I throw a pitch. So, if I speak about about this far from the mic, I think I'm being heard okay. I'm not hidden by the flag. I have to confess, when I'm introduced by my campaign manager, I have to resist the temptation to give her a kiss on the way up, because I just, you know, the thought of kissing your campaign manager might get me in trouble with the way politicians are, what should I say, accused of various things today. But let me say a little bit about how I'd like to proceed, first of all, and no, before that, let me thank you for coming. I really think that grassroots politics in a republic needs to operate this way, where we can talk with one another pretty informally. And I'll only speak about 15 minutes or so, and I'm telling myself that as much as I'm telling you, because as a retired teacher, I'm used to giving 15-minute lecture or 50-minute lectures, and you push a button and I'll give you a 50-minute lecture, and it'll be pretty good too. but that's not what we're here for tonight. Because I want to explain what I think we need to do. But then I really like to focus on what you're concerned about. And so I want to hear your questions, your suggestions, your comments. And not only am I the only candidate who does town halls, I also am quite unusual in that I do not screen questions. And usually you come to something like this and you're going to hand a written question to somebody, and that somebody is going to say, oh, we don't want this one, we don't want that one, and we'll maybe take this one. So it's wide open, it's very informal. I just ask you to save your questions for about 15 minutes or so until I've had a chance to explain what I think we need to do. And I also believe that campaigns should focus on candidates taking the time to tell people what changes or policies they believe should be followed. And that's going to be my focus. I think campaigns should be future-oriented. I think they should be positive. I think they should be future-oriented. Politics is kind of like a river. It just keeps flowing. And there's not a lot of value in looking at where the river was 2 years earlier. We want to know where the river is today, and we want to know where it's going. And we want to talk about where it needs to go, or what we want to float on the river, or whatever we want to do. So let me begin by referring to one of my favorite presidents, Abraham Lincoln. And I especially love Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, which is obviously his most famous speech. But I have to warn you too, I do like to tell stories once in a while, so I'm going to interrupt myself for a real quick story. It's a true story. It has to do with our former president, Bill Clinton, who at one time said, and referred to as the Constitution says, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And he said that as the Constitution refers to, and then he corrected himself and said, no, it's in the Declaration of Independence. It's really in Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. So I'm one of these people who likes to get it right. And I'm not running against Bill Clinton, so I'm not trying to hurt him in any way. But anyway, Abraham Lincoln said at the beginning of his Gettysburg Address, and I invite you to, if you haven't read it lately, do a search. It'll take you about 5 seconds to find it. At the beginning of his Gettysburg Address, Lincoln said, the Civil War put the United States to a test. And the test was whether a country conceived and born in freedom could long survive. And I mention that because I think it's quite obvious that our nation is being put to the same test today. Different form, we're not dealing with a civil war, but nonetheless, if we're going to live in the real world, if we're going to look at really what's happening, truth be told, our nation is being put to the test of whether a nation conceived and born in liberty can long survive. And what I'm saying is that the survival of our nation as a beacon light of freedom, as an economic leader, if not the economic leader of the world, the future of our country in those senses is very much being threatened. And I'd like to give some detail on that, and I'd like to also explain what I believe we need to do. So let me start with the detail. And as a retired teacher, I like to have visual aids because one of the principles of education is that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I don't know why politicians don't catch on. I mean, I go around and speak, and I'm the only guy that has a chart. You could save yourself 10 minutes with one chart. So this chart is pictures our national debt. And I want you to know I didn't draw this chart. I picked it off a website called factcheck.org, and this is an organization that checks the accuracy of what politicians say. And so if you want to check the accuracy, just go to factcheck.org and you'll see this is their chart. And so the chart describes our national debt from 1944 up through the end of this year, 2012. And I know it's very, very risky for me to give those dates. And the reason it's risky is because I was born in 1944. And so this spans my life. And I know some you know, some slick politician is going to say, well, gee, Quist, I mean, look at what's happened since you've been here. So I know it's dangerous, but nonetheless, we need to see what's happening. And the direction of the chart is pretty obvious. The numbers are troubling. And right now, I mean, by the end of this fiscal year, we will have over a $16 trillion debt. And just to put that in perspective, a little over a year ago, our debt exceeded our entire economic output for the year. Call that our gross domestic product. And so we now have more debt than all our GDP. If you compare this to a family, it's like a family that makes $36,000 a year and spends $54,000. And I think we all know that you're not going to keep making your house payments real long if that's your balance sheet. Other things that concern me about this debt is that if you look in the future 3 years, and let's suppose we don't turn the corner on this, and I am here for one reason. I'm here because we need to turn the corner on this. If we don't turn the corner on this, within about 3 years, interest on the national debt will be greater than all our spending on national defense. And that's significant because our federal government and our Constitution was put together and formed, what? For the purpose of national defense. And if we're spending more on interest than on the purpose for which our country was formed, obviously something isn't right. Other facts we should know. Of every dollar the federal government now collects, 20 cents goes to pay interest on the national debt. And that's not on capital expenditures. As a farmer, as a businessman, I don't mind paying interest if I'm getting a return. There is no return. Down on the farm, we call this money down a rat hole. Okay, we have no return on that. Now, if we keep going in the direction we're going, if we keep doing this, in 2 more years, we're going to be paying 25 cents out of every dollar collected for interest. If we don't change direction, 4 years from now, we're going to be paying 30 cents for every dollar collected for interest on the national debt. Now, those of you who know something about business know that what we're talking about is an organization that is heading pell-mell for bankruptcy. And I wish I were exaggerating. I am not. It is that serious. And there is no indication in Washington right now that anything significant is being done to turn this around. And I believe that is because not that we have bad people, but that the system breeds, generates, produces this. We have to change the way we do business. Now, having said that, let me just go back a little bit to what my campaign manager said. We have 37 grandkids, we have 10 kids. The only reason I am here is because I and my wife Julie, and I know you, we want our kids to have the opportunities that we have had. I mean, we have lived the American dream, folks. If we don't turn this around, our children will not live the American dream as we have. You know, you do opinion polls and you ask people, do you think the next generation is going to have the same level of opportunity we have had? If you look at the polls, the majority says it's not going to happen. And I believe it can happen if we turn this around. But if we don't turn this around, it won't happen. Now, one more little bit of bad news, and I'm not here to be the harbinger of bad news, but we have to know what we're dealing with. Several weeks ago, the writer Mark Stein, who writes for National Review, fills in with Rush for Rush once in a while, certainly one of the very, very knowledgeable people in our culture, came back from a visit to Australia. And Australia is doing much better than we are. In the last quarter, the Australian economy grew by over 5%. Ours grew by less than 2%. And according to Mark Stein, the Australians, both the political community and the business community, is convinced that financially we are headed for collapse. They look at these numbers, they see no indication of change. And according to Mark Stein, the Australians are planning their political and business game plan on the assumption that we are going down. Okay?